Welcome to the Just Another Pop Culture Reference Mystery Box, where each month I will be doing a pop culture inspired custom modification based on the roll of the dice. This month I'm returning to the Mystery Box roots and building a Gaslands team, which means I'm modding 2 cars. And of course there will be a pop culture twist. And here they are. It looks like this team will be made up of a Track T and a Pontiac Rageous, which are both cars that were made by Hot Wheels starting in the 90s. Each month my mod is based on what I roll for each of 2 tables. The first roll is for the pop culture theme from comics, games, literature, movies, music, or TV. And then the roll of the 12-sided dice gives me a random paint color for my build. Since I've got 2 cars, I decided to roll twice for my build's color scheme. So this month, when all is said and rolled, I'm building a TV pair in green and metallic tones. And for my extra challenge this month, I'm building them for the tabletop game Gaslands, which uses modified cars for a game that is part race and a whole lot of combat. Off camera, I stripped the Rageous, but for the Track T, I want to keep the original yellow paint job, so I'm just going to remove the black tampos. This is done just with some acetone, a Q-tip, and since these tampos are on all sides of the car, a good amount of elbow grease. I didn't break the car apart at all, so I do need to be a bit careful around the plastic pieces of the car because the acetone can melt them. But since I'm going for a rough Gaslands aesthetic, it means I can settle for not perfectly removing the tampos if I get too close. I don't have to worry about the metal parts, which there are a lot of on this car. For those new to the game, each Gaslands team takes on a sponsor, which has a specific style and gives specific skills. The sponsor that I chose is Slime, which, according to the Gaslands Refueled rulebook, is a group of wild, wide-eyed, and ragged young people. One might even call them fearsome fighting teens. Which, speaking of slime, all of this work to remove the tampos is because that yellow paint job kind of inspired my entire theme. She reminds me of April O'Neil, the reporter friend of our favorite heroes in a half shell, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You know, the 80s and 90s cartoon heroes who mutated because of slimy green goodness. See what I did there? But I also rolled green. And as I mentioned in my last mystery box build, nail polish can be a cheap and easy paint option. I was not planning to use it for 2 builds in a row, but LA Colors metal nail polish in Jaded just happens to be a great metallic green. It's cheap and it gives full coverage with just 1 coat, so it was basically perfect for this challenge and for my second car, which is designed for the turtles. I'm not building the party wagon here. I'm starting with turtle green and moving forward with other inspirations from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I did completely throw out the windshield topper for this car, making it a convertible, and it leaves a lovely platform for weapons. Gaslands is as much a battle as it is a race, so picking weapons is a crucial step. I thought about incorporating the 4 turtles' hand weapons, but decided instead to be inspired by the lasers atop the party wagon. Now for April, what I saw that inspired me for her weapon was her camera, and I think this minigun kind of fits that bill. Plus, there is a perfectly sized platform on the car where I can mount it. A perk of being a slime team is that rams can be added to your car for 0 build slots, and since this was my first time building a slime team, I just put rams on everything. I mean, wouldn't you? I just went with inspiration from the bits and bobs I found in the pieces we have already purchased from Gaslands TV on Etsy, which you can find a number of Etsy vendors who sell Gaslands weapons. I found these 2 pieces that, when put together, remind me of a Manhole cover, which again just screams Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to me. In order to attach them, I'm turning to green stuff epoxy putty. It's literally a yellow and blue make green, clay-like 2-part epoxy, and it allows you to mold, to fill, to affix to your heart's content. A little goes a long way, so the rule of thumb I follow is mix less than you think you need. Thankfully, I also do live with another modder, so usually he can take anything I have left over before it solidifies. You just Mix them together in an equal ratio. You can tweak the recipe if you want. More blue will give you a harder, faster setting putty. More yellow will give you a more pliable, stickier putty. But I always just shoot for equal parts, generally speaking. And you mix them until they're green. For the lasers, it's hollow on the inside and there's holes on the side that I want to get rid of before I mount it right on the front of my car. So bonus, I can use the green stuff to do that and then to adhere it to the top of my car. And unlike something like super glue, I have a bit of time to move it around and shape it as I need to before it dries. I do want to put a little bit of epoxy around the edges to try to hold it in. Otherwise, sometimes you could, once it's dry, add super glue, anything to just make sure that it is fully affixed and not just plastic upon plastic or plastic upon metal. To make the solid manhole cover, I need to use a good amount of the green stuff to fill the space and then also to adhere it to my car. I use wooden tools for manipulating the clay, to remove the excess, to smooth it, to shape it. These are just putty tools that you can find at any craft or hobby store. Why won't you get off my... Get off! Get off! Get off! It does dry into a solid plastic within about a day, and then I can paint over the whole thing, green stuff and 3D printed RAM and all, with a metallic silver tester's enamel for my base coat. I also have a piece of armor plating that I'm going to use as a windshield replacement and that I want to paint silver. I can't really use helping hands for this, so I just have to be careful while I'm handling it. You might want to wear gloves if you don't want to get paint all over your hands. To be able to get the whole surface and edges, I ended up improvising here. I have a little toothpick and paint spin thing going. Yeah, you work with what you've got. Again, the challenge color scheme is metallic. And in Gaslands, metallic pretty much could be equated to rusty. So for the minigun, I first am applying a Tester's Flat Rust for my base coat. I'm also going to do the same for the spikes I added to the back of the turtle car and the spikes I added to the back of April's car. Seriously, rams for days. And being a little messy is okay here. I'm going to go ahead and brush rust onto the wheels and all the metal parts on the car, along the door frames, pretty much anywhere on a car that would collect rust. And I'm going to go through and do some more detail rusting later, but for now, it just starts to get that weathered look to my car. I am not an experienced figure painter. I've managed to paint one successfully for a Gaslands UK challenge and was quite happy with that. But for now, I'm not adding figures to either of these cars. Instead, I want to be clear that this is my car for the 4 turtles, so I painted a seat each for Raphael, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Leonardo. Detailed painting takes time, so there you go. Once the rust is dried, I'm going to make my car look worn by dry brushing the shiny metallic silver over the top. With dry brushing, you really want to brush most of the paint off on paper towel or a piece of paper or just literally anything that's not your car before you get started. It really should be a dry brush. You can always add more paint. It's really hard to take it off. The nifty thing about dry brushing is it ends up giving that illusion that the metal has rusted as opposed to that you started with rust and then added the metal top coat. Oh, the magic of modding. Now I just need to attach the gun. I don't have to worry about cyanoacrylate off-gassing affecting my wheels. I'm not racing these cars, I am just going to use them for the game. Some people even glue their wheels firm. I don't do that, I like them to roll. But anyway. I don't have to worry about the off-gas ruining my race, so super glue it is. It's starting to look like a car. To put the turtle car back together, I need to cut the tabs off my rams. No fancy tools are needed here. This is a pretty thin 3D printed plastic, so regular old scissors will fit the bill. Pro tip, don't let your husband see on video that you used his scissors to cut plastic. Oh, where did that go? Flying. It went flying. And that, my friends, is why you should always wear safety glasses. Through some YouTubeverse time travel magic, back before I attached a gun to her, I found the perfect front ram for April. The paint color is exactly the same. It's sort of like Hot Wheels uses the same paint repeatedly. The size is stupidly large, and it's a big scoop, which is a news pun. The only problem is it's currently attached to a speed dozer. Yoink! Fix that problem. Not with magic. No, with a hacksaw. If I'd known how easily this was going to saw off, I would have done it on camera, but too late. You can see where I originally planned to make the cut, but you have to be flexible when modding, and I quickly realized that there was a thinner area that I could get through much more easily, and I do want to file it to make sure it's smooth. I don't want to hurt myself on my own car. I also will file some damage onto the car, right there on the front edge. I have occasionally used files or even a rotary tool to do some more severe damage to a car when I'm designing it for that rough Gaslands aesthetic, to make it look like bullet holes or even saw blades or anything having done damage to the car. Once filed, it looks like it'll fit right on. So once again, once I figure out the angle I want, it's time for more green stuff. I'm using it in a very basic way here, but you can do so many things. People can mold some beautiful things. You can fix your track with it, all sorts of things. So if you want to know more about green stuff, be sure to check out the quick tips from the March 2nd issue of Diecast Racing Report. That's all about epoxy putty. As for me, I'm just filling in the gaps here. I once again will use my tools to smooth it out. Once it's set, I am going to paint it over with silver and then a dry brush black to give it the same aged look as the metal of the base here. Again, there's a lot of metal on this car. But until it's dry, I'll have to wait. Another green stuff tip: always keep a little water on hand. It really helps you smooth and shape the putty while it's still wet, of course. Now that that's attached, we can... Hey, that's not yours. You're not helping. Not helping. So, I want to make it look like there's something actually holding on this very obviously aftermarket scoop. Jewelry chain is actually typically a really good scale. I got a bunch for free from neighbors via a site called Buy Nothing, which is an Uber local network which is focused on reducing consumer waste. So I'll take your Changled chain. It's great for Gaslands. There's a link in the description. I also have these pieces from a pirate ship model that my spouse purchased for another thing that he's building. And so I can see if I like the way that looks. Once you start modding for Gaslands, you never throw away any bits and bobs of anything, I swear. I can even just use cut cardboard off the back of a Hot Wheels. I've done this in the past for a Gaslands aesthetic race car that I built for Diecast 64, and you can cut it to whatever shape you need, and once it's painted, it works great. You can paint it to look like metal, you can paint it to look like leather. One fun thing here is it is a little bit more pliable than, say, those hard plastic pieces that I was looking at. After considering all the options, I decided to go with the chain. All it took to cut it to length was my X-Acto knife, and again, super glue gets it attached. When working with super glue, I definitely like to keep toothpicks handy. Here I'm just wrapping the chain around the ram post that came on that scoop, and then I'm going straight back to the driver cab. Once I've got it all arranged around that post, a dental pick actually really helped to pull it back. Tweezers would be another good option. Just anything to be able to handle the little things you're working with. Another dab of super glue. And I'm going to use toothpicks to pull the chain taut, so I don't get glue all over my metal instruments. Or my fingers. So I realized that I had a gun pointed directly at the post that I had just attached, which means that something had to give. So I used my handy dandy rotary tool, and I'm just gonna grind that post on down, try to make it look like it's been eaten away by bullets, and after a good bit of grinding, no more problem. There, that's better. Back on the turtle side of things, it's time to detail paint the manhole cover, which is modeled after a manhole cover, specifically New York City's manhole cover, which was the model for the ones that they use in the cartoon. Yeah, I may have spent way too much time researching manhole cover designs for my 1987 to 1996 cartoon children's show. But when I take my very fine paint brush and give it a little time, when all's said and done, it doesn't look too bad. As I mentioned earlier, metallic in Gaslands could be synonymous with rust. There's a lot of different rusting techniques, but ever since the July 17th issue of Diecast Racing Report, my go-to rust guru has been Night Shift, and his video on painting a chipped rust effect. It starts with dry sponging on small dots using a light color paint. For this build, I'm using silver to imply the metal underneath. Again, this is dry brushing. You really want to make sure you tap out pretty much all the paint off of that sponge before putting it on your car. I also take a brush and apply it around the edges, to the tops of the doors, to the wheel wells, connecting some of the spots that were left behind by the sponge. Adding a little randomness, I think, really helps. The next step is to do basically the same thing, the same brushwork, not the sponge part, but now you're using a dark paint. In my case, I'm using black. This takes a very fine brush. I'm using a 10/0. I don't really know what that means. I'm not an artist originally, but anyway, it's the finest one I bought. You want very little paint on it. And I am going over the same spots that I first put down in the silver, both the chipped dots and that edging. I'm just showing it on the green car, but ultimately I am doing all of this with both the green and yellow cars. Finally, the top layer is the rust layer. Again, I am using a fine brush, I'm getting most of the paint off, and then I'm going over those same spots, those same edges. I'm not covering everything perfectly. That's actually very intentional. It's those little bits of light and dark underneath that give the chipping paint job its depth, that make it look so realistic, and make it look like parts have actually rusted away. So it makes it look damaged. I think my best work using this technique so far was making Click, which is battling it out over at Chaos Canyon as one of the outlaws. And pretty much the success I had using this technique on that build was what keeps me doing it over and over again. After all the rust detail has been applied, I go over it with a wash to accentuate the detail and to add a rougher overall appearance. I do let my enamel dry because, contrary to actually good advice, I have a tendency to use an enamel wash. It's a rusty brown that I created myself, and I really like the way it looks, but it has to be done very carefully because enamel wash is basically just tinted paint thinner. What would be a wiser choice is using an acrylic wash, which can go over enamel without risking the detail painting that you've done underneath. So you've been warned. For the final touches, I'm adding sixes, like those seen in April's news van, to the sides of her car. They fit perfectly into the door rectangles of this car, and to get the hand-painted slime appearance, I tried painting drips, but apparently I do not have that skill yet. So instead, I finished with a bit of paint thinner, which helped give that runny, rough look. See, as aforementioned, probably want to use acrylic wash. For the last detail on the turtles, of course, it's pizza. I'm using cardboard to make tiny 2-scale boxes that, from the weapon sides of things, I'm calling grenades. Pizza grenades. I can't imagine the turtles actually throwing away pizzas, so perhaps they're the used boxes that they've turned into grenades? I don't know. While the base coat dries, I'm going to take the opportunity to put the car back together. UV glue is a quick and easy way to do this. It's pretty permanent, but I don't really need to open this car up ever again. So I didn't tap the posts, and I'm just gluing it together. If the light can reach it, the light can harden it. It's actually the same stuff that's used for dental work and to fix chips in your windshield. So all it takes is a little drop, and then after about 2 to 4 minutes of applying the light, she's done. For the pizza boxes, I went through and did red dots to give sort of a checkerboard pattern, and then painted a yellow and brown and pepperoni pizza in the middle. I used acrylic paint for the detail painting because it's matte and it dries fast. Speaking of acrylic, here is an acrylic wash, which is a great way to weather your vehicle. This sand color, when mixed thoroughly together, is a good way to make it look like you've been driving through the desert. However, for this build, I'm going to use my go-to enamel paints, specifically testers in sand and a leathery brown that we mixed together at home. Once again, we're talking about dry brushing. Just putting a little bit of paint on, rubbing most of it off. I like to hit all the bottom edges of the car, including the underside, because let's be honest, at some point it will flip. Which is true whether you're just playing a game or whether you're racing. I get the edges, I get the wheels. If you are building for the aesthetic but still wanting to race, be very careful with the wheels. Probably don't paint the wheels would be the best advice. I do definitely like to get the coming off of the backs of the wheels splatter as though that's where, because really that's where the road dirt would actually land. And one little detail painting thing I nearly forgot. So like the front of the party wagon, this Rageous just happens to have the perfect set of teardrop shapes right in the front of the car, in which I can paint a set of side-of-mouth turtle teeth. So of course I did. It took me a couple takes. The second one was for the camera. But it ended up looking just like the turtles and the party wagon. So I guess it inspired it more than I thought. Now that all the pizza boxes are dry, All it takes is a little more super glue, and I found what is going onto that platform. A haphazard stack of Cowabunga grenade goodness. So I do have to layer the super glue since they're in a pile and not all flat on the surface. But once I, stick my fingers in a good amount of super glue, it's probably better to wear gloves. I'm all ready to go. And there they are. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and April O'Neil. And of course, since it's Gaslands, I took them to the mat. For those keeping score at home, this TMNT team has a total cost of 60 cans. Both were middleweight cars and had standard hull, handling, and max gear. April cost a total of 28 cans. She has a minigun, a front ram, which is that big shovel, and a rear ram, which are her spikes. I gave her the perk of Delicate Touch. The turtles were a bit more expensive at 32 cans. This is due in no small part to the fact that I absolutely, for the point of storytelling, had to have all 4 turtles in the car and purchased a 2 crew member upgrade. Their car has the perk Hog Wild and is equipped with a combat laser, grenades, and a rear ram, those spikes. Unfortunately, because we do play for 60 cans here, I was limited in what I could purchase, and those side rams ended up just being decorative, I guess. Thanks for watching. If you have a technique or a race or any other challenge you think I should try as part of the Mystery Box Challenge, make sure to leave it in the comments. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next time.